Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're entering the weekend, and as usual, we're going to be checking out some special selections. That is where you guys tell me exactly what you want me to listen to, and I check it out. If you're interested in submitting your own request, go ahead and do that through the Linktree link in the description. There'll be a nice button that says Special Selection Submissions. Alright, let's move on with this one. Our request today comes from Kevin McGuire. It says Love Exchange Failure by White Ward. White Ward is my request. This is what we're going to be checking out today. We got a 12-minute song ahead of us. Judging by the album font, the band font, we're going to be looking at some metal. So, yeah, let's dive in and see what White Ward is doing. This is Love Exchange Failure. Very slow 4/4 here. It took me a second to figure that out. Especially since they emphasize the and of two there. They have them in groups of three. The bum, 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 bum. I really felt that as 6/8. But it doesn't really fit into a very nice 6/8. So I think we're in 4. Yeah, that percussive that's on 1 and 3. So yeah. Also, this is distinctively not metal. Real dark jazz. I'm loving this so far. Now see, this is a slow burn I can get behind. We have the sax providing a strong direction and melody line on top of the slow burn. I really don't care how long it takes to get to the next section. I'm loving this. Also, that sound, it sounds like steel brushes run along a snare. Run along the head of the snare. Although it also sounds like a snare with the beats turned on. And then just like a loud sound vibrating the drum head. I think either one of those are how they achieve that. Normally I talk about double time, but I think these guys are like, they just went 2.5 times what they were. interesting that they're painting a very similar atmosphere with a completely different take, completely different set of voices. It's also interesting that we have that lead guitar line above the textural stuff going on in the background. Those double bass kicks were insane, just holding that down for that whole minute or so. The second transition with no smoothness to it. It's very interesting to see how many different ways they can achieve the same exact thing. Some rhythmic synergy there between the vocalist and the drummer. There's a lot more melody than I would expect from this style. I was just about to say how a lot of the weight of the song so far has come from using strict, quarter, eighth, and 16th notes, and not really deviating too far from that. Okay, so that was temporary. There's some really weird overtones on those tremolo picks, like a warbling sound, or chirping actually. Alright, bit of harmony. So now we're returning to the intro idea to finish the song out. Okay. It's really interesting to see how they can involve melody and actually also stability within the song that is primarily very unstable. They really play around with looping chord progressions and dissonance. What's going on here at the end? We started with ambient tones too, so I suppose that makes sense. Sort of like a palindrome. Very similar intros and outros, but in reverse, and then I suppose the middle wouldn't be entirely palindromic. Because I feel like the harsh section was very linear. I don't think we looped around too much, but there's also a lot of similarity in the composition as well. So I suppose it is possible that we did loop around a bit in the harsh section. A lot of it just sounded kind of samey, so it felt more linear, at least to my ears. So yeah, very interesting song. I'm not sure how the book ends fit within the middle section, how it all comes together. There's a nice DNA holding it all together by way of emotion and atmosphere. I think I talked about this a little bit during the reaction, where I said that they were achieving the same idea in several different styles, several different ways, and I that's the only thing that I can really see tying everything together. I don't see much of a theme with the ambient noises at the beginning and end, and then the kind of like dark jazzy element there at the beginning. But that really tense, dreary, slightly unsettling aspect permeates the entire song, and it does tie everything together in a way. So I appreciate that. I do want to expand on this idea of approaching the same idea, though. I don't know if it was the exact same chords being utilized throughout the song, or if it was just the same chord movement. So if they were doing like the 1 chord, then the 4 chord, and then I don't know, like the 7 into a 6. I mean, that's not a fantastic chord progression, but and then they were just changing around what the 1 is, but still keeping these same distances. That's another thing that could have happened, because you're going to get the same textural and emotive elements out of the progression, even though the chords themselves are not going to be identical. They're going to have the same characteristics, the same properties, and the same names, at least as far as naming, like the 4th and the 7th, stuff like that. But they took this chordal idea and they extrapolated it out to not a full 12-minute song. There was some deviation in some of the sections. The guitar solo part was definitely one of those deviations, but it is very cool to see so many of the chordal elements of that dark jazzy section also show up in subsequent metal sections. And they really explored this singular idea in a lot of different ways, changing the tempo, changing the rhythmic style, adding vocals, adding melody lines, added harmonies, solos, putting all this stuff over that baseline thing. And to me, this has a lot of the same elements as black metal and maybe even a little bit of post metal, where it's a lot of noisy elements. We have the heavy distortion on the instruments that's creating a fuzzy texture. We have a lot of tremolo picking going on in here. A lot of attacks just all over the place, whether it's in some of the faster lyrical lines that were harsh vocalized, so they're very rhythmic rather than melodic. And then also the drumming, which we saw some ridiculously fast drumming on this song in sections, which of course is just a lot of attacks. So there's definitely this harsh atmosphere going on that to me is reminiscent of post metal and black metal. Um, but they utilize that as more of a framework rather than the pull to the song. Those two genres tend to be about the noise, and this one uses the noise to build a soundscape to put other things in. And I think that might be why I enjoy this more, even though there's a lot of things in it that I'm typically not too fond of. Um, but I mentioned it a couple of times how often there's a melody line, even if it's something simple. I think the first time it popped up, there was a guitar that everybody else was doing real fast stuff, 16th note, tremolo picking and bass kicks, just laying out this assault of sound. And there's this guitar playing like eighth note triplets or something, um, or maybe it was just packs of three. So you get a 3 against 4 feel, but I think it was something simple, just like three notes, like do 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 do, something like that, just repeating the same 3 notes against all this chaos, and that's just not something that I expect to hear in music like this. And then we had a guitar line that used the tremolo picking to play a melody. It was a rather simple melody. I think it was like 6 or 7 notes, maybe tops. Um, but still, it's not just playing these long, full bar, 2 bar, 3 bar, 4 bars lengths of a single note, just to build that atmosphere, to leverage the sound of playing quickly, and those harsh, the harsh distortion and the multiple attacks, and really anchoring on the sounds of playing rather than the music of playing. Really digging into that sonorism we were talking about the other day. So, um, yeah, they took, like I said, something I expect from another style of music and added melodic elements to it. And then we had a harmonized version of that line. I think it was like an octave down or something like that. And then we had these gorgeous guitar solos, and all of this I completely forgot about, ignores the fact that we started the song with an extremely strong melody line, even if it was very relaxed and restrained, mostly due to the fact it was a ridiculously slow tempo. The sax solo. So, uh, yeah, we have all of these elements of harmony inside of these typical constraints of textural composition. And I think that's phenomenal. This is definitely how I would get into black metal or post metal. I don't know. I think this is post metal adjacent, not very close. I would say this is closer to black metal. But then again, I'm always terrible with my genres, so I'm probably way off, and this is something completely different. This could be mellow death for all I know. um, but yeah, this would be how I get into some of the harsher stuff. I don't know if I could come back down from this. I don't know if I'd be able to get into bands that don't use melodic aspects and just have that harsh textural thing going on. But this would help me appreciate some of those elements more because they're in context of some things that I personally enjoy and tend to expect in music. Um, so yeah, that right there is just really cool. It's really those two things that stood out to me here is the fact that they can take a single idea that they introduced at the beginning in a very slow tempo. I mean, this was 60, 70 BPMs, maybe. I think I'm even over on that. It was so slow. Had this, jazzy feel to it, saxophone, some ambient noise. Um, and somehow they took the emotion and atmosphere of that and put it into death metal or black metal or whatever this is. Um, and yet that same feeling, the same emotions that they're evoking, the same atmosphere is present in that all the way to the end, up until I would say the guitar solo, which had a completely different feel to it. We'll touch on that in a second. But yeah, it's just, there's a lot of inventiveness that goes into that. I'm not sure I would ever think that I want to write some jazzy stuff and translate that to metal and then put that in the same song, but they went ahead and did it, and I think they did a phenomenal job. Um, I don't think that this sound is too unfamiliar for this style of metal. I think it works very well with it. It's interesting that they could take that and put it into jazz, which is the way I think that this went, depending on where the inspirations for this band come from. But to me, it sounds like they're metal first, and they found a way to translate that into a jazzier sound, and that does not sound easy to me. I've never tried it. I probably should. It sounds fun, but yeah, it's not something I've ever thought to do. And you really have to build that same atmosphere without any of the textural ideas that help define it. So, yeah, like I said, not necessarily something that I think would be easy, and I want to give him a little bit of praise for pulling that off. Um, the guitar solo, though, felt happier. It felt less chaotic. It felt less distressed. It felt less what's that word I want? Unstable. There's a lot of stability in there. I think I mentioned too. I don't know if it's purely the chords that changed underneath or if it had a lot to do with the note relationships, the notes that were being used in the solo being combined with what was played underneath it in the chords, creating different chord combinations than what we had prior. And honestly, all it takes is one note. You change a flat to a neutral, and you can change a minor chord to something brighter. That's really all it takes. Sometimes is one note. So I think minor to major is two notes, two flats to neutrals, um, and bam, you have a completely different feel. So. Uh, Yeah, like I said, it could be something simple as that. Just the chord stayed the same, but the solo changed. And I don't know, it felt more optimistic, but then it ended the same way the song began, minus the sax. And it feels a bit cyclical and not as hopeful as the solo made it feel. So, like I said, I'm not too sure about the themes of the song and how everything ties together, but I am a bit in awe of how this was all created. Uh, Taking these metal ideas, putting it into a jazz concept, and retaining a lot of the same feelings. And also just the pure musicianship, as usual with this style of music, just the stamina required to play at these speeds with the precision required for the length of time that they do. Not to mention, they probably put on live shows and have the stamina to do that as well. It is just jaw dropping to see people pushing the envelope as far as performance and the human body's ability to withstand the strain that they have written for themselves. Um, so yeah, cool stuff all around. I am very happy we had this pick. There's very few harsh sounding bands like this that are going to get me interested in the genre, and this is one of them. Like I said, the melody really helps, and it's a tiny thing. They added in, a recurring three-note loop that just provided a little bit of melody above that wall of sound that they create, uh, both through the repetitive writing, but also the mixing and kind of compressing all the sounds down. But you just put one melody line above it. I'm like, hey, that's not so bad. It's like the little bit of sugar in the medicine. You know, it doesn't go down so harshly anymore. So, yeah, very cool pick. I'm glad we got to check that one out. I will probably have to look more into these. I can't say that I'm going to fall in love with the band, and listen to them every day, but I am interested in seeing more of this style of music. Um, just because it is going to help me get into some of this harsher stuff, and who knows, maybe in a few months I end up having White Ward albums in my library. It could happen. But those are just my thoughts on Whiteboard's Love Exchange Failure. This is where you guys come and know. Hit me up with your thoughts, opinions, what you thought of the song, if you enjoyed it or not, anything that bounced off of you, and maybe if you have any ideas about the themes and how it all ties together. Like I said, I didn't pick up any overarching ideas other than that emotion that really ties it all together. So if you have any insight into that, go ahead and let me know. I'm quite interested. When you're done commenting, you can head up to the description box. There's a Linktree link in there. As I said before, that is where you can submit your own special selection, as well as check out the Discord, Patreon, or Twitter. There's also more links in there if you're interested in anything adjacent to the YouTube channel. And then, of course, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, all that YouTube stuff. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, with another special selection before heading into next week's theme, which I'm not going to spoil. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. Usually I'm like, yeah, we're going to start this theme up next week, and I'm really excited about that. But I am excited about it. I really am, but I'm not going to ruin the surprise. You guys can find out about it on Monday. All right, until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.